A major rise in murders across Indianapolis is disturbing a lot of people and the authorities who work to keep us safe.
What I'd say to those that are desperate is that it's not worth this.
Today we're sitting down with IMPD Chief Rick Hite to get his take on ending the violence. The Congress finally agrees on $1 trillion farm bill. But what about jobs as a new report is out? Plus the Hoosier effort to stop taxing Olympic medalists. And we're looking ahead to the second half of the Indiana General Assembly. Our political insiders debate. It's all coming up on this edition of Indianapolis This Week.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Focus is public safety. Indianapolis is facing a violent start of 2014 with homicides at near record rates so far. Here's how the numbers break down so far this year. As of February the 1st, IMPD reports there have been 15 homicides, and that's an increase over this time last year in 2013. Since the beginning of February, we've seen even more homicides. And there is good news in the crime statistics, though. We are seeing less crime overall in Indianapolis. Rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults are all down so far. The crime is down in the city nearly 15%. Joining us now is Indianapolis Metro Police Chief Rick Hite, who has served in his position for more than a year now and has worn a badge for more than 3 decades. Chief, good morning. We see these conflicting numbers, crime down, homicides up. Is city police, are you in control of city streets?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, we congratulate the community and the men and women at IMPD for joining forces to help us reduce crime by 15% overall. But let's be clear, homicides are one of those hard numbers, but we know for a fact it's one of the easier crimes to solve because there's usually a relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. Well, this is no different. And when we look at the cases scientifically and using our intelligence, we find there are connected pieces between the individuals involved in homicides, the perpetrators and the victims. But more importantly, I think it's important to note that we know for the fact members of the community can help us solve these crimes, and they've done it. Our homicide clearance rate is 71%, one of the highest in the country.
When you put out a message last week, you talked about helping people get out of the game because you know who is behind, or you think who's behind, who's behind the trigger. Yeah. How are you going to get to those folks? And is this police department prepared to help in that effort? Because it's a different kind of policing to help people get out of the game.
Well, India is a little more sophisticated than a lot of cities in terms of being able to work with community leaders. And what we're trying to do something is innovative. We normally have a reentry process, which we have several of our districts take an initiative to start their own, working with, also with the mayor's initiative with Dr. Willie. We have to realize that there's a chance, an opportunity for us to identify those persons who are in the game, who have not been arrested. And Dr. Jenkins has a process that talks about those coming out and getting into services, but we have to identify those persons who are in the game right now, who have not been arrested, and give them an opportunity to turn their lives around. So get out of the game gives you that opportunity.
What more has to be done on the ground level? Because at some point, listen, at some point we get it.
Yeah.
You're men and women who work for you, do their jobs every day, but the community has a part in this as well, right? Well, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, churches. Are you getting enough support from the people in the neighborhoods to help you do your job?
That's a good question, because I think the problem we're going to have to have.
Are you? But answer my question first. Are you getting the help you need?
I believe we will get the help we need, because we have to have a conversation with civil society understands what we talk about, numbers, how it impacts and perception of crime. But right now, I'm talking to people who are 2 or 3 stories underground in terms of their underground movement and underground economy, who know for a fact they're tired of running from the police and the stick-up boys. As they say on the street, the po-po and the stick-up guys. So how long can you run from the law? How long can you run from those who you owe debts to in society? They're part of the underground movement. And there comes a point when you become saturated and you get tired. How do we give you that relief? What we're seeing is that people stepping up. We see outreach programs. We see people walking neighborhoods at night helping us, various programs and clergy groups doing that. But right now, we have a group of young men who have made it very clear that they want to get out. Some don't know how to get out. But then we have a set that says, you know what, I'm a career criminal, this is what I do, and we have to address that as well. And that's what we're talking about. That career criminal, that deeper in young person or deeper in person who decides this is their lot in life, that's what we talk about mandatory sentencing. But what about the person who says, I've done this all my life. I've done it for a period of my life. Now I want to transition out. Why do I have to get arrested? Be an ex-offender to get services.
We asked some of my Twitter followers what they wanted to ask you. This is one question from Head Ed, who wants to know what could be done to get more officers on the streets. And I know that you and the director are looking at adding more officers over the next couple of months and years. How quickly is that coming together?
Well, we're using quite a few of the resources we have available. Reserve police officers, our traffic units are now in those hotspot areas. We combine collapse systems. We took our violent crime unit, for example, and merged a gang unit with that, developed a process of intel gathering. But we have to be clear that our biggest deterrents are our community. I mean, we know for a fact we have neighborhoods that have been historically violent, and that using violence as a means of settling disputes has been the nomenclature. We're going in those neighborhoods. When we talk about 5 zip codes or designated areas, that's what we're doing. When we talk about the demographics of the person, the perpetrator, and the victim having something in common, we have to teach out that this doesn't have to be. And we realize there's still less than 0.5% of the population involved in these activities. We can salvage them if the community joins forces with us and we find summer jobs for young people, connect them back to resources in the community when they come out of jail. We believe we can do both the carrot and the stick approach.
I have 30 seconds left, so I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. So are we on time with the next recruit class?
We're ahead of time in a lot of ways. We met with the 201 of the recruits last week. They're eager, they're ready. We have over 201 who are going through background investigation right now for 50 positions. That's huge. And my last question to you, will this be an issue, this violence issue, will this be an issue that will be resolved by money or with people actually helping you get the job done? I think it's a rolling up a sleeve approach, using resources as a catalyst, but it's a change of mind. You change your life, means saving your life. You have to have a different mindset going forward, that we have a legacy in the city of success. We have to include those persons who may have transgressed in the past, a part of that. But to be honest with you, gun crime equals jail time for those who don't get it. I hate to say it, but we have to have mandatory sentences for those who refuse to adhere to society's values and wills. Chief, I thank you so much. Thank you.
Please come again. You're always welcome, sir. Thank you so much. The other big story this morning, Team USA competing in the Olympic Games in Russia. The first medals were handed out yesterday. Now there's a Hoosier effort to stop a tax that can be as high as 35% on what an athlete actually earns. A gold medalist receives $25,000. The tax could be as high as $9,000. We spoke with Congressman Luke Messer of Indiana in Shelby County about his co-sponsoring of H.R. 3987.
We ought to celebrate success. These folks that are Olympians have worked their whole life towards this goal. The value of their medal and their bonus is relatively modest, but they ought not be taxed on it. Now, I do think if someone has endorsement deals or they're working out in their profession, they should be taxed on those, but not on the value of their gold medal or their silver medal or their bronze medal.
Good luck to Team USA. The plan is set to spend more than now $3 trillion of your money. The impact on agriculture and those who need food stamps. We're sitting down with Congressman Andre Carson after the break. After months of fighting on Capitol Hill, a nearly $1 trillion farm bill will now become law. The bill passed the Senate by a vote of 68 to 32 on Tuesday. It was already approved by the House. The legislation sets 5 years of eating and farming policy in the United States. It increases spending on farmers markets and cuts the food stamp program. Consumers will now have more information about the meats they buy. The bill also requires details to be included on the packaging of all beef, chicken, and pork sold in the United States. Indiana Senator Dan Coates released a statement on the day of the vote saying, in his words, it has nearly been 6 years since Congress last authorized a farm bill, and Indiana's agriculture has waited long enough. While not perfect, he goes on to say, this legislation provides Hoosier farmers with the certainty they need for the next 5 years. Indiana Democrat Senator Joe Donnelly released a statement as well, saying, in his words, the Hoosier ag community now has the certainty it deserves. There are a number of provisions in this bill important to Indiana, and I look forward to continuing to work with our state's farmers and rural communities. Joining us now is Congressman Andre Carson, who took a firm stance against parts of the farm bill that cut food stamp programs for millions of Americans. Is this farm bill, did it go way too far, or is it enough?
Well, it's not perfect. I'm happy that food banks will get more resources. What it does do is that it closes a loophole that states held. Indiana never took advantage of this, but effectively states would provide a minimum amount of emergency heating assistance, which in turn would allow a recipient to qualify for a higher allotment of food assistance. So that loophole is going to close. But more than that, I think it helps our farmers, which in turn helps our economy.
Some of your colleagues on the other side said, look, we just want a farm bill that talks about agriculture, not food stamps, not energy assistance.
Sure.
Was this bill too loaded, or do you think this bill did the right thing for Hoosiers and Americans?
Well, I think there's some benefits to farmers. Unfortunately, we're going to see a cut in food stamps, and during our economic downturn and our recovery, for that matter, it's unfortunate that more and more families will have to make ends meet in a different kind of way. They're going to have to tighten their pockets, and in November, those folks got $40 less than they would normally have received, and so it's a tough decision, but that's what legislation is all about.
On this Sunday, you're in the district talking about jobs, among the many issues. On Friday, we saw a new jobs report that said that the country added 113,000 new jobs, far less than what was estimated. The estimation was to be more than 170,000 jobs.
Sure.
Still not enough. What needs to be done in the sector? People want jobs.
Well, unemployment is at 6.6. That's progress. We have to fight harder. I think the Democrats' Make It in America agenda is positive, where we're going to make manufactured goods that are typically made in China in the United States of America. We also have to pass a highway bill. What that will do is it'll fix dilapidated streets, broken infrastructure, broken bridges. That's a job creator for us. And I think as long as we can focus on a highway bill that is meaningful, we could create those necessary jobs. Also focus on job training programs. We have a lot of colleges like Ivy Tech and IUPUI and Martin University and Marion, for that matter, who are focused on jobs training. And I think we've worked with organized labor. If we can get some apprenticeship programs in place, we could see some improvements in that
We
area.
heard the president during the State of the Union talk about that this should be the year of action.
Yes.
A year of breakthrough.
Yes.
Will you find colleagues on the other side of the aisle that you'll be able to have that year of action, that year of breakthrough? Or will we see another divisive Congress?
I talk to numerous Republican colleagues all the time. They're concerned about immigration reform. Having 11 million folks working, tax-paying U.S. citizens.
But Congressman, let me stop you on that.
Yeah.
Speaker Boehner said already that he does not, that his party does not trust this president on immigration. So how can that ball be moved if the speaker, the guy in charge, is saying,
Sure.
look, I don't trust the guy at the White House?
Well, Speaker Boehner can't control his own Republican caucus. The lay Republican wants immigration reform because he or she knows that those same folks in their communities who are starting businesses, they're entrepreneurs, they're putting Americans back to work. We just need to have a comprehensive form that allows those folks to get into the system in the right way and become tax-paying U.S. American citizens. That's how we solve our deficit issue.
In our last 30 seconds, besides the big issues that your party will be pushing for, what will be your big push in this congressional session?
I just introduced a piece of legislation, reintroduced the Recidivism Reduction Act. Right now, when folks are released from incarceration, it takes about 3 months to 6 months for them to kind of get back into society or find a job. If they receive benefits, their benefits kick in immediately. That way we don't have them recidivating back into a life of crime and keeping our streets safe.
Well, keep us posted on how that bill does. Congressman, you are
Always a
welcome
pleasure.
anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your input. It's halftime for the Indiana General Assembly right now. And unlike the Super Bowl, this one isn't over yet. The fight over the same-sex marriage amendment is about to make some major steps. Our insiders debate after the break. We've reached the halfway point of the 2014 Indiana General Assembly. And while there have been a number of topics debated, the issue of the same-sex marriage amendment has captured more attention than any. The question now is, where will the bill go from here? It could pass and go to voters this year or not until 2016. Or it's possible the bill just could die. Then another issue quietly making its way through the session is the bill for mass transit. We're talking about all those issues with our two political insiders, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz and Kip 2. Let's talk first on the issue of same-sex marriage amendment. It goes before us, the Senate tomorrow. What's going to happen?
Well, the potential is that they could add back the sentence that was taken out of the House, and if that happens,
and that sentence is the one with the civil unions.
It's the one that people interpret as saying civil unions are not allowed, as well as marriages between same-sex couples. If that happens, and then it passes the Senate in that form, then it goes back to the House for what we call a concurrence motion, and then the House has the entire amendment as it passed the first time in front of them. My guess is that if that happens, they won't pass it, and the thing could die.
And this is going to sound weird. I actually agree with Kip. If the Senate puts that language back in, that second sentence proves that the Capitol is basically going to explode, because you have a lot of House members who made it perfectly clear by their vote of 52, a solid majority, they did not want that second sentence. And if the Senate puts that second sentence back in, then actually I think the whole bill fails, and then we never have to talk about this issue ever again.
In fact, the governor was very clear last week when he talked about that he wanted it to restore to the original situation. He did not want any changes to this bill.
And he very much wants it on the ballot this November. He does not want it on the ballot in 2016. He's made that pretty clear. It's a political calculation.
What about all the money being spent on both sides? I mean, who's winning in the debate, though? Is it because both sides have spent a whole lot of money trying to convince the others to either defeat it or to make it go away?
I would argue right now the anti-marriage amendment folks are ahead slightly, because number one, they scored a victory by getting that second sentence taken out. The pro-marriage amendment people had threatened primary challenges. I've been looking through some of the data. It does look like that has come through against Republicans who voted to take out that second sentence. So I'd say it's the anti-marriage amendment people for now.
I agree, but I think it's bigger. I think Freedom Indiana has really outmaneuvered Eric Miller and his group.
On the issue of the transit bill, another big issue, new talk on the transit bill, which sort of just popped out there at the State House, but no light rail, and you can tax corporations. This is not going really well with the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, the problem is that my friends in the business community have always said, transit is needed for economic growth and economic development. So what the lawmakers did was say, okay, business, you're going to pay for part of it, the fare writers are going to pay for part of it, and the taxpayers will pay for part of it. So it's spreading out the burden evenly or equitably amongst all three parties that will be using mass transit.
Support that?
Well, the important thing here is that it finally got that a bill got out of the Senate. I mean, you can look at the details of the bill. It will not be the way that the bill ultimately ends up at the end of the General Assembly. Last year, the House passed the bill, didn't get out of the Senate. This year, they started in the Senate. Now a bill has gotten out of the Senate. It goes to the House. House will make changes. This thing's going to go to conference committee. I think it is a big step forward.
Breath.
Yeah, I think it's a big step forward. I really do. I think the transit folks have done a good job of getting this thing going.
And this is further than it has ever gotten before, because it's always died on the Senate side of things.
Yes.
Will the governor's personal business property tax issue, will that die or will that move forward?
The Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute released an important study this week that said, number one, it will cause property taxes to go higher for homeowners, and that it doesn't really create the jobs that he said it creates. And I think that that's a difficult proposition for him to get over.
And you have basically still two competing versions. A House version that gives counties the ability to opt out. You have a Senate version that really only impacts small businesses. I would not be surprised if you see some sort of hybrid of the two. And piggybacking to the governor's comments, we asked him, once again, your criteria for this tax. He says, well, it can't undue burden local governments, and I don't want taxes shifted. That leaves you only one alternative. Any money that local governments lose has to come from the state for it to be replaced.
30 seconds left. This was a major centerpiece of his agenda for this session. What happens if this goes up in flames?
I think they're going to.
And that suggests that it will, but I'm just saying, what happens?
Well, he has a failure underneath him, and I can't tell. I think the Republicans won't want to embarrass the governor, so they'll try to pass something that says we all are together and we did this the right way. But the fact of the matter is, I think behind the scenes, most of the legislators think it's a bad idea.
They'll give him something so he can declare victory and then immediately retreat.
Best of the business. Thank you so much. Stand by. We're getting feedback from many of you on many of the topics that we've talked about last week through Twitter. Here's what some of you had to say on the issue of the same-sex marriage amendment. Rabbi Aaron Spiegel says, in his words, the days of the Indiana legislator promoting prejudice and bigotry represented by HJR 3 are over. It's the 21st century, he says. On the issue of the divide in Congress, Peggy says GOP's focused, intense hatred of POTUS makes that party unable to do anything productive for people of the USA. Thanks for your responses. You can always tweet me at my Twitter handle at Rafael on TV. The conversation between our insiders continues on Twitter all the time. They're up there 24/7. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion, and stay up with Kip, Abdul, Laura, and Jennifer throughout the week. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break, and feel free to Twitter us. They have their phones ready to go, right, guys?
Right.
Of course.
Okay. The Indiana Department of Child Services has a new leader, and RTV6 investigator Kara Kenny sat down with her for her first one-on-one exclusive interview. Mary Beth Bonaventura was appointed by the governor a year ago and took office in March of 2013. The embattled state agency has faced scrutiny over child deaths, turnovers, and even violating state law. Records obtained by the Cossacks investigators show that between 2005 and 2011, 292 Hoosier children died due to abuse or neglect, and 74 of those had a prior history with DCS. 12-year-old Devin Parsons was beaten to death in 2011 by his mother and boyfriend, despite numerous warnings to DCS.
What is your biggest fear?
That another child has to go through what Devin Parsons had to go through. That's a huge fear, and trying to figure out how do I stop that from happening.
Your agency is not meeting the state's own guidelines when it comes to caseloads. Is that acceptable to you?
Oh, absolutely not. It's not acceptable, and it means that children aren't as safe as they could be.
Mary Beth Bonaventura says the best thing you can do is call the Child Abuse Hotline if you see something. That number is 1-800-800-5556. The other thing you can do is mentor a child. She says it sometimes only takes one person to make a difference in a child's life. Kara Kenny's exclusive interview is on our website, theindychannel.com. That's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I'm Rafael Sanchez. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.